Somewhere within a few hundred meters of where you are sitting, there is probably a human being who cannot lift its own head. It cannot roll away from danger. It cannot follow anyone. It cannot hold on. Put it down alone in a forest, a desert, a grassland, anywhere our species became our species. And it would be gone before dark. And yet that creature belongs to the most dominant animal this planet has ever produced. A wildebeest calf runs within an hour of birth. A newborn chimpanzee grips its mother's fur and rides while she climbs. Even a kitten, born blind, crawls toward warmth. Our newborns arrive with almost none of that. Almost none of it. For decades, the explanation sounded obvious. Big brain, narrow hips. So evolution shoved the baby out early. Half finished like bread pulled from the oven too soon. It is a tidy story. It is also far too small, because the real question was never about bones. Out on an ancient landscape, with predators reading the wind and a group needing to reach water before dark, the question was brutally practical. Who was holding the baby while its mother went looking for food? Start with what the fossils allow us to say. Human childbirth is mechanically tight. The fit between head and birth canal is close. But when researchers compared living primates, something inconvenient surfaced. Humans have the tightest fit among the great apes, yes. But several monkeys and lemurs face proportions just as severe. They are not carrying helpless infants around. And our newborns are not unusually small. Compared with newborn gorillas or chimps, human babies are rather large-bodied. Our brains at birth are not freakishly tiny either. So what is genuinely strange about us? Not where we start, where we end up. A human brain roughly quadruples after birth. The adult version becomes so enormous the newborn looks unfinished by comparison. Not because it was ejected too soon, but because the finish line was moved absurdly far into the future. The baby is not a premature ape. It is built to do most of its growing outside the womb, in the open air, in the arms of other people, which sounds almost poetic until you think about what it cost. Picture a camp at first light. Cold air, ash still warm. In the dark before dawn, a woman was woken 4 times by a mouth searching for milk. Now the group is moving because the roots here are finished and the water is 2 days east. She has 2 arms. She has a nursing infant who cannot cling to her. She has a 4-year-old who walks slowly and cannot yet tell a safe berry from a lethal one. She has tools to carry, food to carry, fire to keep, and she is producing milk, one of the most metabolically expensive things a human body can do. The arithmetic does not work. It never has. Not once, in the whole history of our lineage, for one woman alone. This is where human helplessness stops being a story about biology and becomes something stranger. Watch what anthropologists found when they sat in camps and counted. Among the Kung of the Kalahari, mothers were the quickest to answer a crying baby. But roughly a third of crying episodes were handled entirely by somebody else. Among the Hadza of Tanzania, infants passed through many hands, relatives most, but not only relatives. Among the Agta of the Philippines, packs of children take over so much minding that mothers are freed for hours. In Central Australia, observers recorded infants carried by aunts, grandmothers, cousins, siblings. A body was almost always available and often not the mother's. None of these people are living fossils, and none of them prove what happened in the Pleistocene, but they show something crucial. A helpless infant is only helpless if you insist on looking at it alone. Stop doing that, and the impossible newborn makes sense. The unit that survived was never the baby. It was not even mother and baby. It was the baby plus the network of hands, backs, eyes, and voices arranged around it. Now imagine being carried inside that network. You are 3 months old and you have never spent an hour on the ground. Your world is body heat, the smell of smoke woven into hair, the rhythm of someone else's walking. Above you, faces appear and vanish. Voices rise and fall in the rising sing-song adults use around infants in essentially every human culture on Earth. A sound so automatic people do it without deciding to. You watch flint being struck. You hear arguments about roots, jokes, warnings, names. You cannot lift your head, but you are already sorting familiar voices from unfamiliar ones, already learning which face reliably appears after you cry. And here is the reversal. That crying, the thing that looks like a design flaw, the thing that could betray a camp's position, is the most effective tool the baby owns. It cannot run, it cannot fight, it cannot follow. So it evolved a sound human nervous systems find almost impossible to ignore. And that sound recruits not one caregiver, but several. The baby is not failing at survival. It is doing the only job its stage of life requires. Stay attached, stay signaled, stay watched, because everything it needs to know is local, and none of it is in its genes. Which plants heal and which kill, which animals bluff and which charge, where water hides in the 6th month of a drought, which relatives can be trusted with your children, which sounds out of all possible sounds are words in this valley. A newborn arriving pre-programmed would arrive ready for a world that may not exist. Ours arrives radically unfinished, and therefore radically teachable. But that flexibility had a price, and somebody had to pay it. Every year a child spends learning instead of producing is a year of somebody else's calories. Every hour of carrying is an hour not spent digging. So a species walked into a trap of its own making. To build brains that could master anything, it had to keep alive children who could do nothing for longer than any animal had attempted. The solution was not a bigger mother. It was cooperation so dense, so habitual, so emotionally enforced that it became invisible to us. Food moving between adults who were not mating. Grandmothers who stopped reproducing and started provisioning. Men returning meat to people who had not hunted. Patience with learners who ruined good stone. We tend to say human beings are intelligent because we have large brains. It is closer to the truth to say we have large brains because other people were willing to feed them for years before they produced anything. Human intelligence was socially financed long before it was individually useful. And your body still runs the accounting. It is why the sound of an infant crying can lift you out of a chair that is not your chair, in a room that is not your room. It is why a new parent, alone in a flat at 3 a.m. with a baby that will not settle, feels a failure so specific and crushing. Not because they are inadequate, but because they are attempting, alone, a task never once performed alone across 2 million years. That exhaustion is not weakness. It is a missing village. It is why you calm when a trusted person walks in. Why silence from someone you rely on feels like danger rather than absence. Why we still, as grown adults, reach for a voice when frightened. You spent your first years learning one lesson beneath all others. Safety is other people, arriving when you call. That instinct never left. It only learned to wear adult clothing. So when you look at a newborn and see something pitifully unfinished, you are reading the wrong object. The baby is not the whole design. The design includes everyone leaning over the cot. We like to imagine our species conquered the world through strength. Sharper tools, faster spears, bigger brains. But the deepest thing about us was never our power. It was that we found a way to keep the powerless alive long enough to become extraordinary. Every capable adult who has ever lived is standing on that arrangement, you included. You were once a body that could not carry itself, and somebody carried it anyway. That is not the story of how weakness was overcome. It is the story of how weakness was organized and became the strongest thing on Earth. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe to Back Times, hit the bell icon, and share this video with someone who loves history.